All right, so welcome everyone to North American Ag Roundtable. This is the roundtable panel, Changing the Way Ag Communicates and Markets to the Consumer. I am super excited about this one. This is like kind of what makes my heart beat in agriculture, and that's kind of facing the mistruths about agriculture. So I'm very excited about this. I'm going to introduce everyone. I'll start with Michelle Miller. She's the farm babe, and she's from Monona, Iowa. Greg Peterson of the Peterson Farm Brothers from Sara, Kansas. We have Sara Steever, and she's the president of the National Agri-Marketing Association from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We have Mike Pasztor of Hemlock, Lakeview Farms in Port Burwell, Ontario. Lesley Kelly, and she's the founder of High Heels and Canola Fields in Watrous, Saskatchewan. We also have Amanda Broadhagen of Hagenley Beef and Broadhagen Family Farm in Bruner, Ontario. So if we just want to go and do a quick intro, Mike, we'll start with you.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Mike Pasztor. I farm in Southern Ontario, right on the north shore of Lake Erie. I grew up on the family farm, went away to college, university, and then spent some time living and working in the city before returning back to the farm, where I farm with my dad and brother. On a mixed farming operation, we grow corn, soybeans, vegetables, ginseng, and we have a little bit of livestock. And I'm happy to be here with you all and looking forward to some insightful discussion today.
Awesome. Greg?
Hi, my name is Greg Peterson. I farm together with my family and my brothers and my dad here in central Kansas. And we grow wheat, corn, soybeans, alfalfa, milo, and some various forages to feed our cattle. And we also make YouTube videos, and a lot of people are familiar with those. And we've done that for about the last 8 years. And things have changed a lot with social media over the last 8 years, but we look forward to continuing to do that. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Sara?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sara Steever from Paulsen Ag down in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I'm also this year's National Agri-Marketing Association president. So NAMA is a member organization that includes agencies like mine, but also agribusinesses, associations, and publishers in agriculture. So it's great for me to be part of the leadership of an organization that champions the cause of ag and the systems that make our ag work. I also grew up on a row crop and livestock farm, and my husband and I currently manage some land that's been in the family since 1888. So still connected to the farm very much. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And Amanda?
Hi, Amanda Broadhagen. I farm with my family. We raise beef cattle. My address says Bruner, but you probably don't know where that is. It's outside of Stratford, so home of Justin Bieber's. So don't hold that against me. I also have a background in digital marketing and communications. I am an active freelance writer, and I am a rural counselor for the Township of Perth East.
Awesome. Lesley?
Well, hi, everybody. I am Lesley Kelly. I'm a wife, mom, marketer by trade, farmer. I go by the alias of High Heels and Canola Fields, where I blog and also have a podcast with Rob Sharkey called What the Farm. And in my spare time, I'm on the Sask Wheat Board and also co-founder and board member of Do More Ag. And that's a mental health organization that champions the mental health of our Canadian farmers.
Awesome. And Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Miller, also known as the Farm Babe on social media. I'm a weekly columnist with agdaily.com, a keynote speaker, and just use social media as a way to bridge the gap between consumers and farmers. And I'm located on a farm in Northeast Iowa where we grow corn, soybeans, oats, hay, and cattle and sheep.
Awesome. Very busy. All right, so we'll just jump right in. My first question for you all actually is related to a tweet that Dwayne Faber sent out a couple weeks ago. And the tweet said, 2020, where TV commercials tell us that our dogs need food made with real meat and less filler. while humans need fake meat with all filler. So we'll just go through and just tell me your thoughts about that tweet. Lesley, can I start with you?
Yeah, that tweet, well, I had a few chuckles when I heard it because Dwayne is great at sharing, being comical, but also sharing great perspective. And that is the age that we are living in, where lots of people want many different things from us farmers. And for us, one of the biggest things is trying to figure out what exactly it is they want when we're hearing different signals, when they want different things in different areas, and they have different values and so much more.
That's right. And Michelle?
Yeah, there's just so much confusing marketing out there in the food space, wondering what people want and then wondering if they're actually going to act on what they believe they want. So, yeah, I think that's just a funny tweet to kind of sum it up as best you can, to realize that there's so many misleading or interesting experiences happening in the food space nowadays. So,
and Amanda?
Yeah, so I think it, again, sort of speaks to it is really confusing for consumers. And I think it also speaks to, the challenge that we have in agriculture when we have that disconnect with the consumer and consumers are making demands. It can really make us puts us in a very vulnerable situation, depending on, what consumers are demanding. And so I think that's, why we need to step up as an industry to make sure that we're engaging with consumers so that we're not always in a vulnerable spot, and partner with, if there are opportunities to partner with big food companies to, market to consumers to make sure that things are accurate and hopefully ag friendly.
Awesome. Sara?
Yeah, so if I was ever going to get a marketing tattoo, that might be what I got tattooed on my arm. I really thought that was funny. And it just kind of sums up the frustration with the misinformation that's out there. And I think it's interesting to try to separate the information piece of it from the opportunity piece, because I think for a long time I felt so frustrated with the misinformation that was out there, when I realized that in some instances they still do represent opportunities for agriculture and for farmers who right now frankly need a lot more opportunities. So definitely a mixed bag, and still definitely funny but frustrating.
Right. Mike?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to kind of echo what everybody else has said there too, and maybe try to expand on it a little further in that, it asks the question, are consumers demanding this from food companies and retailers, or are food retailers trying to influence what customers want and trying to differentiate themselves from each other and gain a part of that market share? So I think whenever we look at these kind of marketing campaigns, and we need to ask ourselves, what is the motive here, and what is this food company or retailer or pet food company or whoever, what are they actually trying to accomplish with this message?
Awesome. And Greg?
Well, I think it has to do a little bit with kind of what's trending at this point in time. Trends change and the demands change, and kind of what's cool changes, and so I think it's like Mike was saying, it's a little bit of both of what the consumers want and also what people are pushing and kind of what direction the trends are going. And so I think it's important in agriculture to pay attention to what is trending, but to also be a part of the discussion of, well, is this trend accurate, or is it just something that has come about because it's been pushed? So
Awesome. So where do you guys feel the communication breakdown occurs between the farm and the table? So where do you see, in your opinion, where that's happening? Amanda, I'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, I think some of it is just kind of right now, like we have, less than 2% of the population are primary producers. So people are just naturally disconnected. We also, like in I can only speak in Canada, like we, don't teach cooking in schools anymore. So there's just that natural sort of disconnect. But I think with that being said, it doesn't mean that people aren't curious, because food is part of our, everyday life, and it is a very intimate experience. So I think with, that curiosity, it leads to a lot of questions. And then also, with the digital age that we're living in, I mean, this is, what, people are on their phones. That's how they're accessing information. And so I think, part of it is that there is just so much information out there, and consumers, some of them genuinely care and want to learn more, but they just don't know where to find that information. So I think there's a lot of different voices, a lot of different, like agriculture is such a diverse and exciting industry that it is hard to find resources. And so I think there's a lot of different ways where the disconnect is happening, but I think some of it just has to do with naturally with, we just don't have as many people connected to the farm, and, agriculture literacy or food literacy in schools, isn't as prominent.
Right. Michelle?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this too has to do with like information that's being put out there, I guess, from like celebrities or different Netflix documentaries and everything, Before I kind of settled down on the farm, I was very disconnected. I was the girl that was like an anti-GMO activist and like kind of came from that other side where I was living in Los Angeles and Chicago and believed all of the myths out there. And I think about what influenced me and my peers and people around me in the city is a lot of that is, you see movies like Food Inc. or you watch videos on factory farming or different things that come from activist groups or food companies or people with an agenda that are changing that narrative. So as agriculture, we definitely need to band together and strengthen that message. But at the same time, fear sells, right? So we have to find a way to share the truth of agriculture in a way that's exciting and interesting, like Netflix documentaries, like celebrities, like people that have a huge voice. You look at an example like, what happened with the Ellen DeGeneres situation and then with Amanda Radke and kind of how you like combat that and say, let's have a discussion. We kind of need celebrities and people with big voices in our corner where if they send out a tweet, it reaches 50 million people, in a couple hours, right? So in my opinion, I think that's where the biggest disconnect lies.
Awesome. Sara?
I'm going to add to what Michelle said about that idea of getting that level of visibility. I think that really is key. I think it's been frustrating for us because we've got a lot of great stories, and I think we've figured out how to connect on values, which is pretty important. But sometimes it's just really hard to get that message amplified out there to everyone that you want to hear it. And we know from research that's done in our industry, there's a third of the people who you're never going to convince and a third of the people who already cheerlead for you. And we're trying to find that middle section of people who actually are still curious and who are open to hearing the right kind of voices. It's just that sometimes the challenge is getting in front of them and really staying visible.
That's it. Mike?
Yeah, and I guess the topic of this panel today is changing the way ag markets to consumers. And in the past, we never really have marketed to consumers. Aside from a small percent of farms that have direct sales to a consumer, most of us don't sell our products directly to a consumer. We sell it to an end user or a processor who in turn sells it to a consumer. So there's always been a little void there. Kind of let other people define what we do or how it's produced. And I think that's where some people with an agenda have become opportunistic and saw here's an opportunity to kind of further our, whether it's animal rights people, anti-GMO, climate activists, people like that have filled that void and kind of defined what we do for us. And I think with recent events going on, there's been an increase in maybe seeing where your food comes from, especially the past 10 years. People are much more socially aware now, and they want to know where their food comes. They want to know how it was produced. So I think it definitely provides an opportunity for us to do that. But we also have to remember that agriculture is a big umbrella. There's a lot of different sectors in it with different challenges, different interests, and different dynamics. So I guess that is the challenge we're facing now is how do we get everybody on the same page?
That's right.
Better good, I guess.
And Greg?
Well, I think part of the disconnect comes from the fact that there's so much to get wrong in agriculture. There's so many ways things can be misportrayed, or people can be misinformed in so many different ways. And like somebody else said, people take advantage of that, especially when there's profit to be made, or there's opportunities for them to take advantage of that. And so we're kind of that's kind of a hard position for us to be in, when other people can take advantage of the easiness to misinform and to misportray what's actually going on. And so I think it's a lot easier to change the truth. It's like I think Michelle said, it makes it sell easier. It gets a lot more attention. It's a lot more flashy, to say that something is wrong, or that something is, something needs to be done about this, versus, well, this actually is the way it is. So I think we need to, continue to fight against misinformation and try to lessen that disconnect. But at the same time, I think that disconnect is always going to be there. It's just something that we need to continue to persevere and work hard to minimize.
Right. And Lesley?
Yeah, well, when it comes to where the communication breakdown is, it would be easy for us in agriculture to say, well, yeah, of course it's the consumer, point our fingers and take no accountability. So I always try to think of, what can I do in my world that can help make an impact? And, in farming, it's also the nature of work that we do. We are in rural areas, isolated, where we expand across a huge geographical area. There's thousands of us that create lots and lots of products where we might only be, the first step in a large process. So I think that just the nature of what we do, we have many silos in agriculture. So what can we do to break down those silos, break down those barriers, come to consumers and have a unified voice where we might all disagree, but we can come united and support each other in those messages. So it's less confusing for the consumer.
Awesome. Yeah. So the next question, I'm sure we've all been in this place. You're at a restaurant, and one of these myths, egg myths, food myths, are on the menu. And I'm always really embarrassing to my family, because I usually directly say to the waitress, this isn't true, right? So I think we all have our ways of myth busting every day. And I've often thought, well, I'm only one person, right? But I think over the last few weeks, we can see a really great example of just one person. And that was Michelle against Burger King, how it started out as Michelle against Burger King. And Michelle, could you just say a few words about how did you do that, and how, and is it possible for us all to gain that voice, or do we have to come together?
Yes, thank you for that. And yes, it does only take one person sometime. I mean, all it was a tweet, right? And if you guys have seen this Cows Menu ad that Burger King did, I mean, it was horrible. They received a ton of backlash. And I just sent a tweet to their chief marketing officer and just explained, how it was just like a slap in the face to farmers, and they reached out to me. We had a Zoom call, and I said, come on out to the farm. And they took me up on it, and it was amazing. And actually this timing is really fitting, because I just heard from them this morning, actually, with the video. They filmed the whole trip, and I got to say, the video is amazing. I'm so pleased with how it turned out. And so, it only takes one person sometimes, and it's this glimmer of hope, right? And we bonded on so many of the same things, right? Like, we all want sustainability. We all want to help the planet. We all want to make sure our livestock are taken great care of, and all these things. And you just have to come together and learn from one another and keep that polite communication and that dialogue open, to kind of celebrate your differences and use it as a way to come together, right? And so it's just been awesome. And so now they said, moving forward, if they do more ads, they want to include myself and other people and experts in agriculture to approve their ads, so they don't make that mistake again, kind of looking back at hindsight. So I mean, I hope that the Chipotles of the world would do the same, right? Because when you actually have somebody that listens and says, you know, we kind of screwed this up, let's make it right. I commend them so much and hope that this becomes the next trend to showcase agriculture in a positive light.
That's it, yeah. Lesley, any thoughts on that?
Sorry, what Michelle did was amazing. And I know there are so many examples of individuals that have raised the profile, given others the hope and the encouragement to also share their voice. But I also like to encourage others that sharing your voice doesn't necessarily have to be on huge social media platforms either, that one voice can have influence and impact at the curling rink, at the hockey rink, in the classroom, at the boardroom table, at your kitchen table, you know, when your family from out of town or in the city comes to the farm, and then you have that opportunity to share more of the things, why you do the things that you do. So one voice matters, and every story matters, and it's all those opportunities and all that dialogue in various areas that help make those impacts.
Great. And Greg, any thoughts about that, about myth busting and what one person can do? You guys know.
Yeah. I mean, I think, since we got started, sometimes I remember, especially early on, it felt a little overwhelming. We were just three guys in our, Nathan and Kendall were still in their teens when we got started. And so we felt a little overwhelmed, like, well, how are we supposed to know what to say? How are we supposed to know how to make a difference? And that's continued over the last 8 years. And I think everyone can probably identify with that, of getting discouraged, especially when you're, being maybe attacked by people of opposing views, or, when something like that Burger King commercial comes out and then you just watch it and you're just like so discouraged, how can this be, the case? And so I think to overcome that, it's kind of like working on the farm. You have your bad days and you have your good days, but as long as you kind of keep persevering, keep on keeping on, you can usually look back at the last 6 months or the last year and see the progress, see the good days. And you kind of have to remind yourself of the positive things that have happened on some of the harder days. And like exactly like the Michelle and Burger King thing, there's going to be times where we're going to make a difference. And, whether that's talking to actual Burger King or Chipotle, or whether that's just, talking to one person online, it's all the same. You can make a difference, even whether it's just one person or whether it's a company. But it takes all of us working together to continue to make that difference together.
Awesome. Amanda?
Yeah, I want to sort of build on Lesley's point about how, we can really make a difference at just a small scale. And one example I'll give, my degree is actually in political science. So I have a lot of non-agriculture friends on my social media feed. And I had a friend who lives in Toronto and had said to me, Amanda, I am going vegan. I want to do this for my health. I want to do this to help the environment. And, I said, hey, like, I'm not in the business of food shaming. Like, that is totally your choice. But, if you're doing it for these reasons, like, I would, I kind of, started that conversation about, I could speak about, obviously the beef sector. And then several months later, the same friend had said, hey, Amanda, he sent me a message. He's like, I've decided that I've started to eat meat again, and I'm feeling really good. And it was all because of some of the pictures and stuff that you post on your social media. I just feel so much better about eating meat from seeing what happens on your farm. And so that's just one example. And so you really can make a difference. And sometimes you don't realize the people that are watching. Like there's people that like and comment my posts, but there's a lot of people that don't. And sometimes those are the ones that you're actually impacting and reaching. So you do have power. And I think the other thing too, there's been a lot of research done in terms of how farmers are a trusted voice. And we need to use that power. And, to Michelle's point, like she was a total rock star, and she has this powerful voice, as a farmer and a social media influencer by reaching out. And, she's been able to engage with that dialogue. And I know I just want to put in a little plug for McDonald's Canada. we have an awesome relationship with them in the beef industry. There's been some great marketing done because we as an industry have that partnership with them, and you see a lot of advertising that says, not without Canadian beef farmers, and they have a picture of a burger, or they'll say not without Canadian potato farmers, and they have, their French fries. And it's a few weeks ago, actually, McDonald's had reached out, and myself and a few other young producers were asked some questions from their marketing agency. They're working on their next campaign, and they wanted to get our opinion on stuff. And that is so awesome. So we definitely have, such an opportunity. We should not just say, I'm just a farmer, be proud. And, we have so much influence.
That's awesome.
Yep. If I can kind of add to that too, McDonald's and Burger King, like they're kind of, with the conversations that I had with them too, it seems like I'm hoping, and this is what I'm gathering, is that's kind of the way that the trend is going to start to go, is with traceability, with showcasing the family farms. I mean, let's give a plug to somebody like Culver's too, right? Like, I don't think you guys have Culver's in Canada, but all their campaigns are like, thank you farmers. Like, they're doing the hashtag Thank a Farmer campaign right now. They're showcasing the farms. Like, people want to feel good. They want to feel connected to their food. Like, how many people feel good when you're at a dinner party and they say, this beef is from my neighbor, isn't it so good? I mean, they want that. So I think that by continuing to have these conversations, hopefully we'll see that trend shift away from misleading marketing and derogatory campaigns over to traceability and feel good and connection to the soil and the farms. So, like, fingers crossed, but I see this coming. I see this happening. So
awesome.
Can I add to Michelle's point? Because I think that's such a great thing to add. And I know in our industry, when we see things like the Burger King and the A&Ws that, we put up our hand and say, that's so, we're so mad and upset, but also taking the opportunity of those McDonald's and Culver's to show our support using that, the same amount of voices when that happens. Because I think companies also watch that. And if we can show our support and our love and appreciation and the wonderful things that we're doing together, I think that's where more companies will also come on board.
Yep, we had that conversation too, where the Burger King guys, they said, every time I post something about Culver's and what they're doing, it goes really viral. Like, these posts have 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 likes, where you're talking about highlighting the companies that are doing it right. So I said to Burger King, I said, did you see those posts? He said, yeah, we did. So it's like, okay, like, we have to keep going. We have to keep promoting and highlighting the people that are doing it right. Because if other companies see that and say, okay, like, let's hope that it continues to go in that direction.
Awesome. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess, well, we're farmers, right? That's our job. That's our profession. When we chose to be farmers, I think most people didn't expect they'd have to be a marketing specialist or a public relations specialist. So yeah, it's not for everybody. Some people are happy just farming. And then you have people like Lesley and Michelle and Greg who have built these brands and have these huge platforms that reach a broad spectrum of people and showcase what we do. And there's several others out there too. But yeah, as an individual, I know when I lived in the city and would go to the gym, and you'd have people you'd become friends with, and the anti-GMO thing would come out. And then if you actually sat and talked to them and explained to them everything, they may, well, that doesn't sound so scary after all. A lot of people are only being fed one perspective and little snippets. And like was mentioned earlier today, fear sells and it gets clicks. And like Amanda was saying, any survey or poll you take, an individual farmer is one of the most trusted and respected people in our society. I think if I'm just a farmer, but if I talk to somebody about what we grow, what we do, people are like, oh, I trust that person. Or anybody else, they feed their family the stuff they grow. They raise their kids there. So it's not quite as scary as it maybe some people try to make it out to be. So yeah, even if you're just a farmer, just a single conversation with somebody in your social group. I know we've probably all had somebody on our social media that we were friends with or know who shared a post of something that you think that's not quite right. That sounds a little bit like fear mongering. And you just put a quick comment and, hey, come visit the farm if you want to see what it's really like, or that's just not true. That's false. So yeah, we don't all need to have huge platforms to reach people. Be yourself, be genuine, and be honest. Most importantly, be honest, because people can tell when you're honest and when you're being genuine. So yeah, there's room for everybody to just be who they are.
Yes. And Sara?
Yeah, I've had individual conversations, some that have gone really well and some that have gone really poorly. And I've found just relating to someone, either as a mom or some sort of a bridge that you can have personally with them before you start talking about anything has been helpful. But the other side of what I get to do is to actually be behind the scenes and be behind the curtain, trying to help amplify other voices. And that's actually, I feel like, really gratifying, because we've seen, you know, our message evolve over time, probably over 6 or 7 years. We used to say, you know, probably even 7 or 8 years ago now, that we're feeding the world. And we learned from our research that that wasn't what people actually cared about. They actually cared about their own family, you know, not other families as much. So our messaging kind of evolved. But I think always having that value connection has been really important over time. And now we're to the point where our messaging is more along the lines of the farmer and you, so that they're connected to all farmers, that they see in themselves a bit of a reflection of the farming community. And that's been gratifying to see that change over time. So as individuals, it does matter. Sometimes it's helpful to be able to amplify it, though, for sure. And support all of you and what you're doing in front of the curtain.
That's it. And Sara, with NAMA, do you have a unified voice that you're projecting? Or is it really up to the individuals?
Because it's a member organization, a lot of the other organizations represent different factions of ag, but I would say unified, yes. There isn't necessarily marketing that comes out from NAMA for the voice of the farmer, but we support the voices of the farmer as individuals and as individual organizations, because in some, you know, there are just times when those messages have to be amplified. And if you can get larger agribusinesses, and I'll since Monsanto doesn't really exist technically anymore, I always felt like they were one of the most visible brands in agriculture for going ahead and just being the spouting whale, taking all the harpoons, but they really did make a stand on behalf of farmers, and you know, they really took a lot of hits for it. And I think a lot of other agribusinesses were fortunate in that a lot of activity got pointed at Monsanto and not necessarily at everyone else, but it definitely brought things like GMOs into the conversation. So that's more the level where NAMA kind of supports what's happening in ag. I think if we didn't have the individual voices that we have that are represented here, though, it would be almost impossible to make a connection with consumers, because you are the guys that are actually making that value connection, that are helping people understand what's happening.
Right. Yeah. So then along that line, what are your thoughts on how could, you know, the million voices come together, and what could that look like for us to become more unified as an industry? So what are just some ideas of where to go from here, and you know, what kind of, you know, how would that look? And I'll start with Greg.
Well, I think that, you know, first of all, social media has allowed the possibility for that to happen. You know, it's also brought on a lot of the ability for people on the other side of things to unite and work together. But I think things are, you know, compared to 10, 15 years ago, you know, you'd see an ad on TV and you felt so helpless, like you couldn't unite with anyone to go up against this. But now, I mean, like with that Burger King ad or with, you know, any of the movements going on today, I feel like farmers and people in agriculture, we're able to unite, and we can do better. I think we can do better at kind of, you know, working together and going with one message, and maybe not, you know, I still think there's some fighting between people in agriculture. We've seen just with our platform, people saying, well, you're doing it wrong, or, you know, I don't like that you're doing this, or, and it feels like people are spending their energy fighting against us when we could be working together to, you know, fight against the people who are actually on the other side of things. And so, yeah, I think social media is the key, and that doesn't mean you can't work together in person, but I think, and it'll continue to evolve over the next few years to where we can continue to utilize that to work together.
Awesome. Mike?
I was hoping you're going to wait for me to the end because, to be honest, I really don't have an answer for you on that.
Right. Yeah. Well,
It's a challenge.
From the farmer perspective, is there a way for farmers to come together, with the help of, us marketing people? What can we do to help you guys, I guess, is also part of the question.
Yeah, I majored in sports management when I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
Use a sports analogy here. I think of farming a lot as a professional sports league where you have 30 plus teams competing against each other, but all working together for the betterment of the league. So in our case, you have all these different sectors of agriculture really competing against each other for different land resources, different things. But at some point, we do need to all come together and find some common ground for the betterment of our industry as a whole. Whether that's lobbying government. We see a lot of, I know here in Canada, we have a federal government that one of their primary policies is climate change. And it has a direct impact on their policy towards agriculture. And it's not sector specific either. It's all sectors of agriculture are faced with some threats because of it. So as a whole, we need to come together and work together to find a way that we all can, I'm trying to think of the right word here, but all, I guess, be common for the betterment of just everybody as a whole, if that makes any sense.
Sure does. Amanda, what do you think?
I think there's opportunities to, I guess, sort of to Mike's point, to kind of rally together on a particular issue or a particular cause. We are seeing that a little bit in Canada with some of our farm lobby or farm commodity organizations. And some of it maybe not even is an issue. Like, when we were going early days of COVID, when, agriculture was facing all of these sort of challenges, there was a lot of commodities that were donating to food banks. So beef farmers of Ontario, egg farmers of Ontario, dairy farmers of Ontario, doing all of these, really positive things. Those are little things that we can do. We've seen also some collaborations on, again, this isn't an issue, but, recipes, beef farmers of Ontario collaborating with Mushrooms Canada, or, things like that, or on the political spectrum, collaborating on, different issues, for example, I know in Ontario, kind of getting ahead of the phosphorus issue, having, different commodities coming together, pooling their dollars together on marketing and trying to get ahead of, some of the, controlling the message. So I think there's, opportunity that way. I think it's going to be a big challenge, to get everyone together on all issues, because, the industry is so diverse. And with that, there's that diversity of opinion and diversity in personalities, right? You have, depending on, the farm, the leaders of the farm organizations will also depend on the success of being able to collaborate together. So with that being said, even though, there's that sort of, it's tough to get everyone around the same table. I think it's important if you can't get everybody around the table, it shouldn't deter you from going ahead and, pulling your marketing dollars together or doing something positive for the industry, because I think, we're not gonna achieve anything if we're gonna say, it's too challenging. I hate all this infighting in the industry. We're just gonna take a back seat, because, if we take a back seat, we're going to continue allowing this sort of narrative of letting other people define us. And we need to, take the opportunity to control the message and define ourselves, and, look for those little opportunities, even if they're, not a big issue, whether, again, donating to food banks, or, collaborating on recipes, or collaborating on some really positive consumer marketing opportunities. I think there's lots out there, but it's going to take some will to bring people together.
Awesome. Michelle?
Yeah, so I think about all of the amazing positive stories that we have to tell in agriculture and all the science that goes behind everything that we do in our industry and how it should be celebrated. But we have to think about how we can utilize that message in a way that's fun and interesting to the point where everybody wants to understand. And I'll give a shout out, here to Greg Peterson Farm Brothers. I mean, y'all's videos have reached hundreds of millions of people now. I mean, it's just insane because what have they done? They've taken it and made it fun and funny and interesting to the point where everybody wants to watch it, which landed you on the Today Show and all of these great situations. And so I feel like, what we're doing in agriculture, we're making a really great headway where we have a lot to celebrate how far we've come. But we have to think about sometimes, we tend to speak to each other too much. We kind of stay in our little ag bubble. So how can we take what we do and kind of work with people outside of agriculture that maybe have the creative talent to really project that by working with different celebrities? Or, think about like the Got Milk campaign in the 90s, right? Like we had like every celebrity pro athlete under the sun. Milk was so cool in the 90s when we did that campaign. And you think about like, what other things are successful, right? Like, yes, fear sells, but think about like a Geico commercial or something like that, where it's just funny. So we have to figure out how we can utilize people that have creative talents with marketing and collaborate with them to really kind of strengthen that message in a much bigger, broader way. When you think of something like a Rachel Ray or like a Dr. Oz or somebody that has a huge platform and they talk about agriculture, oftentimes they're getting people on there that have no agriculture background. So by bridging that gap and trying to work with people that have a much broader non-ag audience and stepping outside of our own industry and our own comfort zone, I think together we could make some really amazing collaborations. Just kind of takes bigger, broader industries. A lot of us do what we can as farmers, but we don't have like the connections or maybe the big budget or whatever to do that. But together, we could move mountains together.
Exactly. Lesley, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, one of my hopes in our industry and agriculture is rather than using the verses, the verses between sectors, the verses between products, there's room, it becomes an and. There's room for all of us in the fridge. And, it really pains me to see when we put down other sectors or other products in hopes of lifting, our stuff up. So I hope it becomes, or that conversation changes. And for me, it's, how do I break down those barriers and break down those silos, as just me as a person. I don't have the big budget, the big resources. I'm in the midst of harvest. But I know that companies are doing really great things and have amazing people behind the scenes doing amazing things. So for me, it's picking up the phone and asking companies and asking organizations, how can we work together? That is an amazing question to ask each other. How can we work together? What do you need? Do you have any questions that, for me as a farmer, what can I do to help amplify this message, amplify voices, to learn what you're doing so I can amplify your message? So it's starting with that question, to others, how can we work together?
Great answer. Sara?
Gosh, I think the only thing that I would add to that is I think we have some really interesting timing right now just because of what happened with COVID and people really paying attention to the whole food value chain. And, we probably rarely experience in our lifetime going into a supermarket and not having a case full of beef or a case full of pork. And in our area specifically, one of the plants was the first to go down. So it really, I think, raised awareness. And can we use that as an opportunity to really connect with consumers who have never paid attention to it before and are now taking a look at it? And I know that it's got to be daunting for those of you that are creating content all the time to keep that up, just the level of energy and activity it takes to create the types of content that you do. But man, it is so important because if you're not out there telling your stories, those of us back behind the scenes trying to amplify it have nothing to work with. So we've got an opportunity if we can just capitalize on it.
That's good. So we have lots of questions. So we're definitely not going to get to all of them, but I'm going to try to get through a few of them. We have a question here, Kim Dempsey from Ontario. Could we better communicate with the public at large on the ground in retail? For example, Rexall Drugs now offers clearly branded areas of their drugstore offering branded Staples products and in a well-branded Staples section. There's also a branded section for M&M meats. What about a section in retail grocery stores that represent various sectors, associations like our Dairy Farmers of Ontario or Dairy Farmers of Canada? Can we meet the consumers where they make their buying decisions? I feel like we aren't meeting the public in some obvious places. Food for thought, no pun. Awesome question. Who wants to take a go at that? Any takers, Michelle?
I just was going to say that I love that idea. And I think that's amazing. And yeah, again, I think it just comes down to those partnerships and connecting with each other to figure out how to make that happen. But yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Lesley?
Yeah, I think there's such a huge opportunity to have or increase relationships with those in retail. I know on the grains roundtable side, it's been really hard to develop those relationships with the retailers. So, just keep poking, keep asking. I know one of the biggest things that I've done in the past that has been really, really awesome is just taking a shirt that says, I'm a farmer. Ask me a question to the grocery store. That's opened up lots of conversation, lots of questions, but I would love to see retail look differently, sell products differently. I know that's a huge ask and there's so much money and processes involved, but a huge opportunity for us for sure.
That's awesome. Amanda, thoughts on that idea?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. We see it a little bit, Loblaws in Ontario, at least I've seen this time of year with a lot of fruits and vegetables in season, having, big photo displays of farmers in the fields, above kind of produce, that kind of thing. Obviously, those are just images and there isn't that two-way conversation that can take place. But yeah, absolutely. I think there's such a huge opportunity. We also see in, again, in a lot of Loblaw stores, the Ontario corn-fed beef logo, and that is branded in a lot of the meat sections. And we're seeing that in like Longo's, which is a high-end grocery store in the Greater Toronto area, branding, meat like, Ontario lamb, which is really hard to find in a lot of other grocery stores. Having those labels are so important. But, if there are ever marketing dollars, resources to be having actual physical people at the grocery aisle, or during, in Ontario, we have, Ontario Food Week or, Ontario Agriculture Week, having that sort of happen at the grocery stores, I think is a really great opportunity. The only challenge is again, resources.
Right. Sara, any ideas and comments on that idea?
Sure, I think those collaborations are really essential. And I think there's maybe some non-traditional ones too that we should be thinking about, because there are a handful of people that really make a lot of food decisions for a lot of people. Institutions like hospitals, retail for sure, but school systems, all of those entities are making really big decisions and choices, and having conversations with them, I think, has a possibility of moving the ball down the field. And I also think within that food value chain, if you think about all the stops along the way, I think, Mike, it was you that said, I'm not selling directly to the consumer. There are a lot of people making decisions in between there. And I think relationships with them too could go a long way. And I'd say like the Institute of Food Technologies, I think, is one that maybe doesn't come to mind for most people, but those people are the ones that are sourcing ingredients. And so that's really a huge and really high dollar volume decisions that are being made. Relationships at those levels, I think, could be good too.
Mike, do you want to follow that up?
Yeah, just to further what Sara was saying there, we talk about the disconnect between farmers and agriculture and those who grow and raise food with the consumer, but it's also there with our education system, our political system. So yeah, all these systems present opportunities that we can look into. The retail sector is good, but Lesley pointed out some challenges with finances and economics. Floor space in retail is very expensive. and then to man it as well. But I'd like to expand on that and go to our education system. Let's teach our kids at a young age where their food comes from. And we can incorporate agriculture and growing of food and raising food with so many different subject matters: business, economics, biology, chemistry, sciences, all those. So it would be a great fit, and I would love to see that happen more in the future.
Very good. And Greg?
I think that it's a great idea. There's obviously a lot of logistical things that have to go into it, but I think that we do need to do better at getting a presence in the the grocery store and with consumers, and really just connect with them in that way. I think for most people I know, in the community that I know in person, they ask me questions about farming, and there's kind of this disconnect of what we do on our farm and where those products go, and kind of versus like when they go to the grocery store and buy products, it's not just coming straight from our farm, and it's hard for them to know how to support us. And so I think that that's a good idea, is to find a way where consumers can feel like they're supporting farmers that they know.
Good, right. We can take another question here. We're just a few minutes left. This is from Becky Parker. In the public trust framework we are using in Canada, trusted verification and assurance systems are a key pillar. Our research from the BC Agricultural Council shows that 84% of people think it's important to have proof that farmers are following standards. How would you suggest marketing our industry assurance systems in a cool, interesting, or sexy way to consumers? Anyone want to jump in on that one? Amanda?
I'll just jump in. I think, I can speak on the beef industry. McDonald's Canada, we actually had the Sustainable Beef Pilot Project in Canada. And I think that was one of the big things that they looked at is, that verified beef program that we have, and it is a voluntary program, but a lot of the beef that is it's going to McDonald's has to be from farms that have that verified quality assurance. So I think we're already moving in that direction. I think the big thing is leaning on and piggybacking a little bit on our partners, for example, again, McDonald's Canada, to do some of that for us a little bit, because, again, to Mike's point, like we aren't necessarily marketing experts per se, but, making sure that we're working closely with those industry partners to help us market them. And I think a lot of it is not necessarily has to do with consumers per se, but it's more so the buyers. So even, you look at grocery stores like produce buyers and things like that. A lot of it has to do with assurance and quality for them. And maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it's a hard thing, because I think when we think of the elevator pitch for agriculture, talking about a quality assurance program is not something that's going to fit very easily in a pitch. So I'm not really, I don't necessarily have a good answer to that, but I think, part of the answer is maybe relying on our industry partners to help with that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too that we can't put more pressure on farmers, right? So I think quality assurance, that's great, but it has to be marketed so that it is sexy. I think that it can't be something like, well, they're not following the rules or they are, right? Because we need less division, I think. Any more thoughts about that, Lesley?
No, that is exactly it, where this is a fine line to balance, where we do amazing things, but then creates that less, that versus conversation too. And I would say that, this can't be done or achieved in one campaign. This is something that, this is more of the how we do things. And I still think we're talking about the why we do things. And that goes back to the whole conversation of the last hour, is helping people show what we do in a relatable, fun, engaging way. And that takes many voices doing many different things: YouTube, egg in the classroom, social media, being at the hockey rink, being in the grocery store. So it's not a one done campaign and a poster that will really achieve that how and that why.
Yeah, that's good. Anyone else want to jump on? Anything to add to that one?
Yeah, kind of going back to the Burger King thing a little bit too, it's almost kind of like, I think we have a theme here today, like a trend is just like how we need to work together through all the way up through every step of the supply chain, and making it interesting. And again, amplifying the content that's doing it right. And keep your eyes peeled, guys, with Burger King. Like I just gave it the okay this morning, but when the video comes out, for us to really give them kudos and really highlight it, retweet it, share it, make sure that they know how much we value the fact that they listen to us, right? Because at the end of the day, what do these brands want to do? They want to increase their profits. They want to know that what they're doing is good for business. And so by reinforcing the good things, like saying, hey, Culver's, you're awesome, and like, hey, Burger King, thank you, like, this is how we have a huge ripple effect, right? So just have to keep building the relationships. And yeah, that's kind of the trend we're seeing through this discussion.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll get to one more question here. It's from Terry Denito. How do we as an industry convince processors to help with marketing, specifically to kids? Half-pint cartons are obsolete and hard to keep cold. I think that processors could really help in updating packaging. So I guess just maybe if we can put pressure on processors to be a little bit more marketable to youth, I guess would be the idea. Anyone want to speak to that? Yeah, Mike.
Actually, it's funny because just before we came on here, I was on YouTube and I came across some posts, and they were McDonald's commercials, Burger King commercials over a 20-year span. And it's so interesting to see how in the 80s and 90s, most food companies marketed to children and to parents about the children. A lot of them had promotions, toys, different giveaways, stuff like that. And we've shifted now. We're more of a socially conscious marketing campaigns going on. And we're talking about food waste all the time and different subjects like that and being more efficient. So that's one way to do it. But I think we got to remember too, the processors, their goal is their own bottom line and their shareholders. Their number one, I think, whenever they come up with something, is not how is a farmer or producer going to react to this, or how is it going to impact them. If we can become partners and collaborators in that discussion, then yeah, we can do more. But I think we just have to keep that in mind as well and go from there.
Awesome. Sara, any thoughts about that?
I was just going to add to what Mike said. I think there's got to be profitability along the way at every step in that value chain, for sure, at the farmer level, and then all the way through to the retail level. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that they can help with the marketing piece of it, because that actually will drive profitability all down that chain.
Greg, any thoughts about that one?
I've said in the past that I think, yeah, anytime you think about in agriculture and in food, the massive budgets and the massive amount of money that is worked with in some of these upper level corporations, whether that's on the farming side or the food side, it seems to make sense to where those large budgets can help support farmers and can help stand up for farmers and be a voice for farmers. But we need to do a better job, helping to make that happen and communicating with them and working with them. But I had made a post, a couple months ago, I think it was on Twitter, where basically I was saying, like, any social media influencers who are being paid for their work by these large ag companies, there's some people who just hate that. They're just like, well, that's not right that these guys are getting paid to post. But that's what I think should be happening more is that we should be funneling some of these large profits that these corporations or larger companies have, and into, ag advocacy or some of this promotion that we're talking about. I don't know if that makes sense, and it may not be a direct answer to the question, but that was my thought I had when I heard the question.
Awesome.
I have to agree with what everybody else has said as well. And people have to realize that social media influencers is just the new way to advertise, right? It's just an extension of advertising. Now no longer are we maybe doing like billboards, right? It's all transitioning to digital. And so it's not the fact that I think sometimes people don't like it because they just don't understand it, right? You just have to realize that we're shifting. We're not doing yellow page ads anymore. I mean, like, yeah, some people do, and that's fine. But as far as like reaching the masses with one tweet, reaching hundreds of millions of people or one YouTube video or whatever, I mean, that's just the way that the direction of the industry is going. And we've got to learn and raise awareness on that.
Awesome. Amanda?
I think an important question to ask here is, who's your audience? Who's making the food purchasing decisions? Is it children? Or is it, is it moms? I think that is something, we need to be cautious about, knowing our audience and using those marketing dollars to know, who we're after, right? Who's most likely to make those purchasing decisions. And to Michelle's point, like everything is online, and, sophisticated marketing, they will, if there's, digital display ads that you're getting on your phone, you are probably in their target market, whether, it's because of your gender, because of your age, because of your interests. So that is sort of the way that marketing is going. And I think, I don't know if necessarily marketing to kids is necessarily the way to go, whether it's marketing to, again, moms, for example, that, something is a healthy food choice, that type of thing. I think we need to stop and ask some of those questions and sort of go from there.
Lesley?
Yeah, I don't know the processing side of that, so I don't have really much to add where they spend their marketing budgets. But if you have questions or comments or think, have an idea, send the company an email. Tweet to them because they're always looking for ideas too, and just different perspectives. So think things can be done differently, or have an idea, pick up the phone and call them.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Anyone else? We're actually a little bit over time. It was a very short hour, it felt like. Does anyone have any kind of closing remarks? There is actually one more question before we go, and it's for Mike. Is Andy Clean really that clean? The power of social media.
Andy is a good marketer in that what he wants to be clean gets shown as clean. Let's just leave it at that.
All right. So he's not for hire or anything, like for floors and windows?
No, because then I'd have to do a lot more work here myself. So
that would be a bad business decision.
Yes. No, but I was just to end things. I just wanted to, I think we get caught up in some of these negative ad campaigns that target us. We're a proud people. We take pride in the work we do and what we grow and what we raise. But I think it's important to remember the vast majority of consumers out there, they just want one thing. They want safe, somewhat nutritious, affordable food. And that's what we provide. So keep letting them know that's what we're doing. We're ever evolving as an industry. From 100 years ago, we look at how much more efficient we are in the work we do. So keep putting our message out to everybody out there. Keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, that's just basically how last comment, I guess.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you all so much. It's been a great hour. And yeah, I'm sure everybody in the audience has enjoyed it too. So, and for everybody else in the audience, make sure you visit NorthAmericanAg.com and visit our exhibitors. As we all know, trade shows have been closed, so a lot of companies are struggling right now. So that's why we've made a nice exhibitor page, and a lot of companies are on there. So go take a look, and if you're shopping, contact them. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone.